All right. Introduction to refereeing part 2. Yay!
Hey.
Any questions after part 1?
No, not at all.
Not from here.
All right. Tonight's much more about the mechanics of reffing and how we look at penalties and how we watch the track and the pack. There's a little bit, let's get into this here. Today's topics: blocking and counter blocking, initiation, call confidence, whistles, verbal cues, and hand signals, contact versus procedural penalties, penalties, because that's what Derby's all about, right? Points and penalties. Official communication, and I added a couple: Zen and the art of officiating and officiating ethics. Just at the very end, they're quick, and they're really the last topics in this introductory class. May as well get them out of the way rather than have another session on them. So no questions from last time? Cool. All right. Nathan, I can't see your video. I don't know if you shut it off deliberately, but it's not there. But as long as you can hear me, we're good.
I can hear you. My internet's acting up, so I turned it off to help out a little bit.
Okay, so I'm recording this session as well. And the first one has been, I put it up on YouTube. It's a private video. I'll send everyone a link to it after this, and I'll put this one up as well. Any questions anytime, feel free to stop me. So let's talk about blocking. There's two kinds of blocking: positional and contact. They both occur in Derby all the time. Positional is usually illegal unless you put an illegal blocking zone in a skater's way to impede them. And by you, I mean a skater, not one of you, because you're all officials, right? The most common example of an illegal blocking zone that gets put in a skater's way is the head. And the example you see of this is a jammer who's on the line waiting for the jam to start, and an opposing blocker gets in front of them about 4 feet away, bends over at the waist, and puts their head in the jammer's way. So for the jammer to leave the line, the jammer has to impact the head of the blocker. That is an immediate illegal procedure or misconduct, depending on the nature of the contact. If it's before the whistle, actually, now in the new rule set, before or after the whistle, you call a misconduct for someone for putting their head in the way. It's unsporting, it's dangerous, and it can actually lead to an expulsion. Doesn't have to be hit. If you put your head in the way once, you get a warning. You do it more than 3 times, you'll be kicked out of the game. And please understand, by you, I mean skaters, not you who are participating in this video session. Contact may or may not be legal depending on the target zone, the blocking zone, and the result of the action. We're going to talk a lot about actions tonight, and initiations and results and impacts and all kinds of things. Blocking always has 3 components: initiation, action, and result. We have to see, as officials, all 3 of these things to call a penalty. The triangle must be complete. Skaters sometimes don't understand this, and they will turn to us and yell, "I just got high blocked," while they hold their head, hold their jaw. And I have no doubt that it happened. And I will sometimes say, I have no doubt that it happened, but I didn't see the initiation. Because I didn't see it, I can't call the penalty. We are required as officials to see all 3 components of a block, or we can't call it. So if you see someone grab their face and their head whips back and they fall down, you can infer they probably got hit in the head by somebody, but because you didn't see it, you can't call a penalty on it. You must see all 3 components. And I need to drill that into you. We must see all 3 components. So there's a really nice picture of a jam in progress. The track is running from left to right. It's a blue-green sport court, like a teal color. The track borders are yellow. You can see them in the middle and at the bottom left of the picture. There's a green triangle and a red blocker, a red jammer who is falling down. So that's pretty standard in Derby. Photographer got a good photo of the jammer falling and a triangle. The question is, who initiated this block? Who is responsible for starting the action? Can you tell from looking at the picture?
It looks like the jammer. Can I say?
Sure. The problem is this is a static photo, so without there being motion, we can't tell who initiated. It could be that 630, the green blocker with her back to us, has the triangle's just pivoted and she's hit the jammer down, just rotated to the left. It could be that, I think that's 367, has just finished hitting the jammer and is looking down at the jammer waiting to see what happens next. It could be the jammer has tripped and the jammer is initiating contact with her right knee into the back of 630's thigh. So if you happen to look and just see this in a game, even if 630 fell down, there is no way to tell who initiated. Maybe 630 fell, or maybe 630 hit the jammer and the jammer is falling as a result, and the jammer then knocks down 630, you might be able to call a low block. But there's really no way to tell from this image who is initiating the contact. So you have to have clear eyes on the initiation to be able to tell what's going on. So I have to see all three components: initiation, action, result. If you see two or one of the components, the only call we can make is a no call. Even if we think something happened, we cannot make a call based on, gee, I think that happened. It just doesn't work that way. The only time we can say, the only time we can take the vision of more than one referee and put it together to give us a result, to give us a penalty or non-penalty, is in official reviews. In official reviews, when the head referee calls in all the refs and says, here's the question that's being asked, Green says that the red jammer fell, and in falling, low blocked Green 630 and knocked her down on the track. And they would like to see a low block call issued against the red jammer from that last picture. Maybe one OPR saw the jammer fall of her own volition with no contact, and then looked away, and a second OPR happened to catch the jammer lifting her leg as she fell and low blocking Green 630. Only in an official review can the head referee put those things together and say that in that case, the red jammer committed a low block. Other than that, one referee must see all three components of the block. And this is for a contact block. Make sense to everybody? Okay. Didn't see it, can't call it. That's what it boils down to. If we didn't see any one of those three components, we can't call it. If you don't see the result, that makes perfect sense. If you see somebody, blocker A hit blocker B and blocker B snaps back, or blocker A hits blocker B square in the back, and blocker B is strong and doesn't move, you saw initiation, you saw impact, there is no result. Nobody fell down, there's no penalty. So any one of those three is missing, you can't make a call unless it's an official review. So now we get a bit deeper into blocking. Established position and trajectory. So established position. The established position is where a skater is on the track, where they are physically located. That is their position. They are established there. They have secured their place. They are comfortable. They might be standing still. They might be moving, but it is their place on the track. There's no one trying to take it from them. It belongs to them. So that's their established position. If you are in an established position, you pretty much have the right of way when you're moving on the track. There are some exceptions, but we'll come to those. So here's a track. Two walls of four, one red, one blue. The red jammer is out of the pack and moving. The blue jammer is coming in the back. Everyone see that okay? The blue jammer moves across the inside line, and the blue blocker in one moves forward and hits the red pivot off the track. So we'll go through that again. Blue blocker is in one, blue jammer is in 3.5. Blue jammer moves to the inside line, blue blocker moves forward, hits red pivot off the track, opening a hole for the blue jammer. Is there a call against the blue blocker? So let's say blue blocker hits red pivot in the center of the back and knocks him off the track, allowing the blue blocker to come through. Is there a call against the blue blocker? So that contact there is a back block on the blue blocker. You will hear skaters say it's only a back block if the blue jammer takes advantage of it. There seems to be something lacking in derby education somewhere. If the red pivot loses her position because she is hit off the track illegally, that is a back block. No one has to take advantage of that hole for it to be a back block. As long as she's lost position, it's a back block. if the contact was illegal, the target zone was illegal. So in this case, the red pivot had an established position, and the blue blocker moved her out of it. Everyone okay with that? Okay. The back block is called because the recipient, the red pivot, had established position on the track, and their relative position was changed by the illegal block. So whether or not the jammer takes advantage doesn't matter, because the pivot was hit off the track illegally and it changed her position. Oops. It's illegal. Let's talk about trajectory. Trajectory is the path you are following on the track, where you are moving to on the track, what line you are following while you move on the track. Are you coming across from outside to inside in a straight line? Are you moving in a straight line up the inside? What are you doing? Your trajectory is your line of motion. If you place yourself in the path of a skater with an established trajectory, you're the one who is at fault, not them. So if you get hit illegally because you moved in front of somebody who was traveling in a straight line, that's on you, not on them, even if they initiated the contact. They may start the contact, but because you moved in front of them and it was too late for them to move, then the fault is yours, whether or not there is a penalty. So 2 3 walls, one red, one blue. Red jammer is out, blue jammer is coming up. The blue jammer has an established path, a trajectory towards the outside line. So the blue jammer is moving up towards the outside line. The red blocker sees this happening and moves laterally to get in front of the blue jammer, and as a result, they move after the blue jammer has a chance to get out of the way, and they are hit off the track, their back block, by the blue jammer. Because the blue jammer had the established path and the blocker moved in front of the jammer, there is no back block call. Jammer had the established path, the blocker got in the way. So you can't be held liable for illegal actions that occur because you are moving and can't get out of the way and someone steps in front of you. Otherwise, you'd go to the penalty box all the time. All a blocker would do is just jump in front of every jammer and the jammer would go to the box. So there has to be some fairness in it. If a jammer is coming up the outside line and someone just jumps in her way and gets knocked down, then it's not fair to send the jammer to the box. And fairness is a big part of this. So established trajectory and established position relate to where you are on the track and which direction you are moving in. Everybody okay with that? Red eye, you good? There is an established position clause also in effect before the whistle blows. So even though you have no relative position, because the game is not in progress, there is no jam is running, because you have established a position on the track, if somebody jostles you and moves you out of that position, that will be an early hit. The idea is to try and get away from skaters who jostle and push and try and squeeze their way into walls and knock people down doing it. It's unsafe action, and therefore if someone has a position on the track and they're knocked down before the jam, then a penalty will be issued against the person who knocks them down. And it's down, out of position, or off the track. Any one of those three. Everyone good with that? Counter blocking. I'm going to read some of these. I'm sorry if they get long-winded. Any motion or movement towards an oncoming block by the receiving opponent designed to counteract an opponent's block. Counter blocking is treated the same as blocking and held to the same standards and rules, except there are a couple of exceptions we'll talk about. So if somebody blocks you, it is legal to block them back. That's the nature of counter blocking. You are countering their block. If you weren't allowed to block them back, they'd just knock you down and off the track all the time. So this is the core of derby, blocking and counter blocking. A couple of times where counter blocking is not legal. First one is, if someone has been hit so they are straddling the track boundary or they are off the track, they are not allowed to counter block. Once you are straddling the track boundary, you are considered to be off the track, and if you're off the track, you can't return a block. However, once you are completely off the track, someone who has been blocking you is obliged to stop blocking you. They can't keep hitting you once you're off the track. You're not allowed to play derby, they're not allowed to hit you. So they make it equitable by putting that in place. But if you're straddling, someone can hit you and keep pushing you off the track and you can't hit them back. Skater can't hit them back. And this would be an example of an out of bounds block. Even though the skater who's hitting you is on the track, they are taking you out of bounds. It's considered an out of bounds block. You can also call it unsporting conduct or a misconduct, but you'll see a few different things. Second case, if you're counter blocking somebody and you counter block in a clockwise direction, and that ends up pushing them back or impeding them or allowing someone to gain relative position on them, then you can't counter block. You can't keep hitting in a counterclockwise direction, in a clockwise direction. If you're going to impede somebody, that becomes a penalty. Everyone good with that? All right, let's talk about initiation. Initiation is the act of beginning something. So in Derby, the initiator is the skater who is responsible for contact happening to an opponent, called initiating a block, or a teammate, which is initiating an assist. The initiator of a block or assist is always responsible for the legality of the contact. So if you assist by giving someone a whip, you put your hand, if a blocker puts their hands out and lets the jammer take a whip, the blocker is responsible for initiating the assist. If the jammer skates up behind one of her teammates and grabs teammate by the hips and takes a hip whip, the jammer is responsible for initiating. In a blocking situation, it is the skater who starts the block, the skater who first makes contact, who is responsible. They're called the initiator. Here's our picture again. Who's the initiator? We still don't know. But we can probably make a reasonably educated guess, but I wouldn't want to do that if it had any bearing on the game. So if somebody showed me this photo after a game and said, look, I was the jammer and I got called for a low block and 630 hit me down, what do you think? All I have to say is, yep, that's a really nice picture of someone down on the track. I can't make any judgment calls based on that because I have no idea who the initiator was. How about this one? Who's the initiator? Can we tell?
I would say the blocker because she's got a stop down.
Because she's got what?
Got a toe stop down.
Could be.
She's the one initiating it, trying to slow the jammer down.
Or do a bang bang? She could be. She could have been knocked off balance by the jammer coming past her. Maybe she tried to do a bang bang, but she missed and the jammer leaned into her. We don't know. So we can't tell. Oops. Who's counter blocking? Well, somebody is. Somebody initiated, somebody counter blocked. We can't tell which way it goes. Normally you have to see this to know. Sometimes, the only way to tell is to see the action and know by visual observation who started the contact, who initiated. However, it's not always easy as it sounds. Sometimes there's mutual initiation. Skaters hit at the same time. Skater A hits skater B at the same time as skater B hits skater A. And the common version of this that we see all the time is skater B, or the blue skater, the blue blocker, is skating back to recycle the jammer. A red blocker is skating forwards and sees this, comes at the blue blocker, and they both hit. You can't tell who initiated. There is no initiator. So it's very difficult to tell sometimes. However, if the red blocker is knocked down, impeded, knocked off the track, then you will issue a clockwise block anyway because it was contact in the clockwise direction. But if you have two skaters, one on each side of the track, and they come in and hit each other, there's no way to tell who initiated. No way at all. And sometimes skaters feel penalties should be issued against their opponent when the reality is they were the initiator. And I don't fault skaters for this. They don't know. In the heat of the moment on the track, I'm sure, Nathan, I don't think you skate, but Honey and Red Eye, you know what it's like. You're on the track. All you know is you felt yourself get hit. The common one we see of this where skaters complain to officials, is in high blocks. You'll see a jammer and a blocker who are chest to chest, and the contact is hard enough that the jammer's head goes forward and they hit the blocker's shoulder. And they say the blocker high blocked them. The reality was they had chest-to-chest contact, which knocked the jammer's head forward, and the jammer went into the blocker's shoulder. So the jammer initiated with her head. And we see it happen all the time as officials. That particular case happens a lot. And I don't like to see it happen because contact to the head is a dangerous thing no matter who initiates, but we can't do anything about it. It's not penalizable. And the jammers get really upset if they hit their head goes forward and they hit hard enough that we feel it was sufficient impact, and we issue a blocking with the head. And their answer is, no, her blocker hit, or her shoulder hit me in the face. Sorry, your face hit her shoulder. So we see these kinds of things all the time. In that particular situation, what you will hear from the referees, if you are a referee, you'll hear no call. Just as communication between the referees, just to let so the head ref will let the jam ref know, or the jam ref will let the pack ref know, no call. Just meaning, or mutual initiation, meaning they both hit. There's no way to determine who started the contact. Any questions about that? Call confidence. This is a big problem for new referees, is having confidence in their calls. And you'll see referees who go for months and months and months and never make a call because they have no confidence in what they're seeing. And you think about it, the order of operations in a call is pretty complicated. You have to see an initiator, action, and result. You have to determine whether that initiation, action, or result were legal. If they were not legal, you have to get the initiator's color and number. You have to figure out the correct verbal cue and correct hand signal. You have to blow the whistle. You have to issue the verbal and make the hand signal. You have to make sure the skater leaves the track in that order, all while you are still officiating the game. You have to essentially split your brain in two. You have to go through all this stuff while you keep watching for more things to go wrong, or more penalties in the game. So no wonder newer referees are terrified of making calls. Not to mention the fact that if they make a mistake, they feel like they have screwed up the game. And you see that a lot. Well, I'll screw up the game. No, you won't screw up the game. If you make a call and it's not the right call, chances are somebody else will have seen it because you're a newer referee and we're watching to help you. So we can return someone to the track, we can call the jam and have an official timeout and overturn the call. Lots of things we can do to mitigate any errors that happen. That's not to say we don't make errors, because we all do. All officials make errors. It's part of being human. So having confidence in your calls is really difficult. It takes a lot of practice, a lot of watching derby, and there's other things to do here. There we go. Hints: don't rush your calls. Skaters don't like this, and I can't blame them. If a skater is in the pack, let's say a jammer's in the pack, and the jammer commits something illegal, and the outside pack ref sees it, but takes 5 seconds to understand and recognize that was a call, that was an illegality, and they make the call after 5 seconds, the jammer's halfway around the track. People is yelled against them, and they get really upset because, what the hell? That can't be a back block. There's nobody around me. I couldn't hit anybody. I'm 30 feet from the pack. So skaters get upset, and normally, as a head ref, I will just explain to them later on, that was a later call. The action happened earlier, but the call was made later. Doesn't make them feel any better, but at least they understand why it happened that way. There's nothing wrong if you make a call like that as a referee at the end of the jam and saying to the skater, hey, that was a late call, here's what happened. And just tell them. Communication is important in these cases. Make sure you saw what you think you saw. Take the time to figure out whether you actually saw what you think it was. Don't blow the whistle unless you're 100% confident. There's nothing worse in a game, well, there are things that are worse, but not many for officials, than hearing a whistle blow and then no penalty. And you look at the referee and they're going, no call. Just don't blow the whistle until you're sure. And if you're not 100% sure, don't call it. If you need to, you can come in afterwards and talk to other referees and say, I saw this. Did you see that? Give as much information as you can. On turn 3 in the last scoring pass, I think I saw the jammer cut on the outside past the blue blocker. Did either of you see that? The other outside pack refs. And see what they have to say. And then you can say, you can at least help develop your referee vision. So next time you might be more confident in making that call. But don't hesitate to ask for feedback. The other thing that I found helped really well, or helped a lot, it took a long time to develop, was an internal video recorder in my brain. So I kind of record the game jam by jam in my head. That way, when I make a call, I can play back that video in my brain of what just happened and know that I've got the right details when I make the call. That also helps for official reviews. If the head referee comes in and says, the blue team is stating that the red jammer cut on the second scoring pass on the outside. You were the referee in position. Did you see it? Hang on. And you play that back and go, yeah, no, it looked like she cut, but she lifted her toe stop before she stepped off the track. So she didn't cut. She just went around the outside of the blocker on one skate. Good, got it. Thanks. So tell them what you saw. Don't editorialize. Don't tell them what you think. Don't tell them, you know, the jammer was feeling unhappy about it, and so she pretended it didn't happen. Just what you saw. And if you can record that in your head, that's so much. It means working on your visual memory. Well, that's an important thing. Use whatever mental tricks you need to. This is a big deal. It's always, I don't want to say more impressive. It always is better if you have to go to a coach with an official review or a complaint of some kind, or a captain, and say, blue 467 was your jammer. She passed red 42 and red 91 on the outside, but she lifted her toe stop before she stepped off the track. If you can identify the skaters who were involved by color and number, that goes a long way towards instilling confidence on the part of the coaches and captains and skaters that you do know what you're talking about, you are paying attention to the game, and you're not just making it up. Mental tricks, this also helps as a jam ref. When a jammer goes to the box halfway through a scoring trip, maybe she's passed 2 opposing blockers. You have to know which 2 she's passed, because when she comes out of the box, she's going to pass the other 2. Maybe she'll pass one of them. Maybe she'll pass the same 2. You have to know to not give her more points. So I use whatever mental tricks I can. I'll look at something to do with the blocker who was passed. Green helmet. Only one got a green helmet. She passed green helmet. She passed pink knee pads. Just something. Green helmet, pink knee pads. Even if I can't remember their numbers, I can later use that and go, okay, green helmet is 4-7, pink knee pads is 9-2-2. And that way I've got some kind of tie-in between something I saw and their numbers should it come up in the game for some reason. So use whatever mental tricks you have to. Use mnemonics if you have to. Use whatever you have to do to help yourself remember what happened during a jam. And you'll find the more you do it, the easier it gets. Whistles. Whistles should be clear and coordinated. It is really horrible to hear muddy whistles. When you call off the jam, and it's supposed to be 3 sets of whistles and you hear 7, or it's just one big long whistle because they're all so muddy. So practice whistle cadence. There's nothing wrong with saying to a head referee, hey, can I hear what your whistle cadence is before we start the game? That way you know how fast they expect you to blow 4 whistles. I know jam refs to go, biddy-lee, biddy-lee, biddy-lee. It's way too fast. It should be slower. Dee-dee-dee-dee, dee-dee-dee-dee, dee-dee-dee-dee. And I will, if I'm head referee, I will ask the referees, please make sure you use this cadence. And if they don't, I'll ask them to slow. If they don't during the game, I will ask them to slow down the cadence. Slow down your whistle. Make the gap a bit longer because we all have to match you. So clear and coordinated whistles. Lead jammer is 2 quick blasts on the whistle. Dee-dee. You shouldn't be beep, beep. That sounds like 2 penalties. Penalty is 1 medium blast. If more than one referee calls a penalty, so much the better. That means there was more than one set of eyes on it. I've heard head refs say, no, it's confusing. If you both see the same penalty and you both call it, then it sounds like you're calling 2 penalties. No, it's kind of gratifying when you make a call and the other ref makes the same call at the same time. Because that way you know you're not the only one who saw it, and it helps build your confidence in your calls. Calling the jam is 3 sets of 4. This gets confusing. If the lead jammer calls the jam, then the lead jammer's jam ref blows the first set of 4 whistles. The jam is over at the end of the first set of 4. And then all the other referees and the jam timer join in for the second set and the third set. But the first set should be 1 referee only. The outside never starts the call off. And I've seen this affect games. I've seen it change the lead in the game because an outside referee who could see a jammer trying to call it thought, well, the jam ref can't see her, so I'll call it for them. Once those whistles have started, they must continue their conclusion, and the jam is over. You can't blow 4 whistles and go, oh, sorry, no, keep going, keep going. It doesn't work. Once the first set of 4 is blown, the jam is done. So if the outside pack ref sees a jammer try and call the jam and calls it for them and doesn't realize they're not lead, they may have just affected who's leading the game. So the outside never calls the jam. They always follow. They don't start. Verbal cues should be loud and clear. I've seen referees try and issue verbal cues with their whistles in their mouths, sort of shimmy it off to the side and call out a verbal cue. Skaters can't tell what that is. In fact, NSOs can't tell either. It's just sloppy. So just spit your whistle out, make the call, put it back in again. I also know referees who wear mouth guards. That is entirely personal preference. I don't because I can't communicate well no matter how good the mouth guard is. If you want to, you're welcome to. Just make sure you can be understood with it in your mouth. Use the proper cues. I see this all the time. Blue 467, cut. Nope, that's not the penalty. And a skater has a right to not leave the track if they hear blue 467 cut, because that is not the proper verbal cue for that penalty. It's cutting. And if someone wants to be a stickler about it, they can stay on the track and keep playing derby until they hear cutting. Same with the wrong number. If their number is 467 and I call blue 461, they don't have to leave the track. They can know they committed the penalty. They do not have to leave until they hear me call the right color number and verbal cue. Out of bounds block, not blocking out of bounds. And most skaters won't, a lot of skaters won't know any better. They'll leave the track anyway, but they're not obliged to until the proper color, number, and verbal cue are issued. Once they are issued, they must leave the track immediately. Destroying the pack. It used to be destruction. And you'll still hear old school refs who yell destruction, but it's supposed to be destroying the pack. Hand signals. Hold them up as high as you can for the skaters, the NSOs, and the fans. Everybody wants to know what has happened on the track. I should put the announcers in there too. Everyone wants to know why someone's leaving the track. If your signal is down here, no one's going to know that's a cut. Here, especially if you're on the outside, here. That way everyone knows what's going on. The NSOs know, the other referees know, the skaters know, all the announcers know. Everybody knows. There is somebody signaling lead jammer. Is that a good or a bad signal? What do you think?
Could be better. He could be holding it up over his head.
Right. Oops, it could be this. Chances are, if this jam ref calls lead like that, they're going to throw points like that. And if they happen to be 5'6" and the rest of the referees are 5'9" and the skaters are all tall, no one's going to see those points. Here, up high, as high as you can get them. Straight arm. So always make sure that your hand signals are held up high for everybody to see. That's lead jammer. Hey, Dorothy.
Hey, sorry I'm late.
All right, that's okay. All signals should be held high, high up. Don't impede your own vision, but hold them up so others can see them. Don't do them down here because no one will see them if they're down there. All right, here's a back block and here's a quiz. Ready? Everyone see that move? How many back blocks did that ref call? You just hold up your fingers. Red Eye, what do you think?
3.
Dorothy? Every time you do a hand signal, it's another instance of that penalty.
Once.
Every time you make the hand signal, another penalty of the same type. So I go back block. That's 2 back blocks. It's once only. Like no pass, no penalty. No pass, no penalty is out and back. It's not this. And it's certainly not this. I see this. That looks like a cut. That's almost a cut hand signal. One stays still. Out, back. And that's it. Back block. Out, back. referees in general are geeks about wording of rules and how things are interpreted. So at WFTDCon 3 years ago, they had a 3-hour meeting regarding the nature of the back block hand signal. Should it be 1 pump or should it be 2 pumps? Because 2 pumps is more visible. It's easy to see when you do it twice. But the decision was, if you do it twice, you've called 2 penalties. You've called 2 back blocks. So they debated for 3 hours and came out with it's 1. So all these penalties are 1. Cut or low block is low block. You see this a lot.
なんだね。
That's not a low block. That's some kind of, I don't know, Klingon thing. It's just odd. Low block is just put it there and hold it. Cut is put it there and hold it. Multiplayer is put it there and hold it. Clockwise is over and back. It's not this. The hand is flat. You roll from elbow like you're stroking a cat. And then back. Once. That's it. So all of these signals should be done once. If the skater doesn't see them or doesn't hear the penalty call, well, we'll come to that in a minute. There we go. If a skater fails to acknowledge the penalty, repeat the entire sequence again. Whistle, color, number, penalty, and the swoop. Whistle, color, number, verbal cue, and the hand signal, and the swoop. Whistle, 1 medium blast. Blue, 4, 6, 7, back block, and the swoop. And believe it or not, because refs are geeks and WFTDA cares, the swoop must be a swoop. It's a down and up to send someone off the track. You point at the skater and you go down and up. It's not this, it's not this. It's swoop towards them. Blue, 4, 6, 7, back block, swoop. As a small historical aside, back when we had major and minor penalties, Dorothy, you were skating then, right? Honey Badger, were you? Okay. We had major and minor penalties. You didn't call the minors. You only called the majors. The minors were tallied up on the inside, but you would call blue 4, 6, 7 back block major, and the major meant they had to go to the box. When they got 4 minors, that counted as 1 major, they had to go to the box. So it got really confusing, and the NSOs hated it. I had muscle memory, so it was blue 4, 6, 7 back block major, and I timed major with the swoop, and it took me months. For the first 5 weeks, I went blue 4, 6, 7 back block. When we did away with minor and major penalties, I was so cued to going major. I go when I called a penalty, and skaters looked at me like I was just some kind of weirdo, which I was. But I was trying to break the habit of saying major when I sent them off the track. Thank God that's gone. Contact versus procedural penalties. Any penalty involving illegal contact, whether it's to an illegal target zone or illegal blocking zone, is a contact penalty. Back blocks, forearms, elbows, high blocks, blocking with the head. What others do we have? Low block. What others can you think of that are contact penalties? Clockwise is normally a contact penalty. Out of bounds block's normally a contact penalty. Out of play block is a contact penalty. Any penalty involving illegal actions that affect the game but don't involve contact is a procedural penalty. Any penalty, right, is a procedural penalty. So things like delay of game. It doesn't affect the game that there's no contact, but it is a penalty. Illegal procedure. Illegal procedure is a tough one because there are so many of them. Most of them are just procedural issues. They don't affect the people in the game because there's no contact. Failure to return or reform. Leave the engagement zone, don't come back. During a no-pack, don't reform. Some of them fall into both categories. Failure to reform is a perfect example. We have what's called immediate versus sustained failure to reform. know about these? Yes, no, maybe. An immediate failure to reform is somebody in the front wall who continues to skate forwards during a no-pack, or somebody in the back wall who doesn't move forward when the no-pack is called. That's an immediate failure to reform. They did not immediately attempt to reform the pack. If a skater continues to block, whether positionally or with contact, during a no-pack, then it's a sustained failure to reform. They are sustaining the inability of the pack to reform because they're not trying to help reform it. We call the same thing. We call failure to reform. But internally, we divide them between immediate and sustained. Sustained is a continue to block. Immediate is just didn't try and reform. Failure to return is normally procedural only. Legal procedures are mostly procedural only. So we divide these penalties internally. We normally look at contact penalties as being more severe than procedural penalties. That's not to say we shouldn't call them the same way, but we have more discretion. That's probably the big key word in the new rule set is officials' discretion. We have the discretion to not call things if we feel they're not affecting the gameplay. I think the example I gave last week was if a skater's number has rubbed off their arm, we don't have to call a penalty on them. We can just say, please fix your number. Now, if we've asked them to fix their number and they don't, the next time we see it, we're going to call a penalty. If their number is worn off their arm and they commit a penalty and we can't read their number because of it, and that delays sending them to the box, they're probably going to get a penalty. Because by not having that procedural aspect correct, they have affected the gameplay. So again, it's discretion. If it doesn't affect the game, we're not going to call it. If it does affect the game, we'll probably call it. Penalty hierarchy. This is fun. There's a hierarchy of penalties when you call them. So if, for example, blue blocker hits red blocker in the back with a forearm and knocks down the opposing blocker, the red blocker, what do we call? Do we call a forearm or do we call the back block? There's a hierarchy that tells us which one to call because it could be either one. At the bottom of the hierarchy, we have cutting, skating out of bounds, illegal procedure, and insubordination. These are procedural penalties. They don't involve contact. They don't normally involve hitting anybody. They are just penalties that happen because somebody does something wrong in the game. Anyone can call this, head ref, front pack, jam ref, or OPR. Next up on the hierarchy is illegal blocking zone. So skater A hits skater B in an illegal blocking, with an illegal blocking zone, with a forearm in the center of the back. Let's move it. Well, they hit him with a forearm in the flank and knocked him down. That's an illegal blocking zone. Again, any referee can call that. Then we have target zone. Any referee can call it. So in the initial example, blocker hits blue blocker in the center of the back with a forearm, knocking the blue blocker down. Red blocker would get a back block penalty because it's the target zone that takes precedence over the blocking zone. So even though it was illegal because a forearm was used, it hit an target zone, therefore that's higher in the hierarchy. Out of play, out of bounds, and direction. These are next up because these are situations where the recipient is not expecting the hit. It's unexpected contact. If you're out of play, you don't expect someone to hit you. If you're out of bounds, you don't expect someone to hit you. If you get hit with a directional hit, a clockwise hit that knocks you down, you didn't expect that because someone shouldn't be coming in that direction or hitting you. So they're higher in they're higher in severity on the hierarchy. So as you see, as we go up this hierarchy, as things get more and more dangerous, more and more severe in their impact, they're higher up in the hierarchy. Blocking the head and with the head is next. So these penalties, this hierarchy moves in, it's going up in dangerousness, if you will. The more dangerous an action is, the higher in the hierarchy it is. And then misconduct and gross misconduct. Now, any ref can call a misconduct, but only the head ref can call a gross misconduct. The new one in the new rule set is unsporting conduct. And any referee can call that as well. However, there's the severity escalating. Even though any referee can call it unsporting conduct, At any time, a head referee can choose to elevate that penalty and expel a skater for it. So you can do unsporting conduct. For example, you can throw your mouth guard on the track. That's unsporting conduct. It's not expected to happen. Someone might trip over it, but it can happen. Maybe you get hit hard enough, it pops out of your mouth, or whatever happens, you lose your mouth guard. If you're a coach and you throw a mouth guard on the track in an effort to get a jam called, as happened 2 weeks ago, chances are you're expelled from the game. Because you are not actively on the track. You have no right to throw something on the track in an effort to deceive the referees into calling the jam when your jammer didn't get lead, which is what happened 2 weeks ago. So, go ahead.
Is the unsafe skating penalties up there with the misconduct too? The ones where people try to jump and take out everybody else?
Yes, unsafe skating would be charged as a misconduct or a gross misconduct. So a skater who jumps on apex into a landing zone where there's no space to land, that would be a gross misconduct. And we break it down internally into unsafe skating, but they would be expelled for a gross misconduct, not an unsafe skating. So it's lumped in with the gross misconduct. So again, there's discretion. If a skater loses their mouth guard or something happens that ends up on the track, we're not going to expel them for it. If a coach throws a mouth guard on the track, we're probably going to expel them for it. That's it. That's a gross unsporting conduct. Shouldn't be happening. Penalties, penalties, penalties. Expulsion versus a plain old penalty. Only the head referee can expel someone from a game. The head referee can expel skaters and can expel coaches. In most situations, head referee can expel a fan from the building, although that's a pretty far out thing to do. You don't want to have to do that ever. I've done it once, it wasn't fun. If there is no clear evidence of a high-level infraction, like an unsporting conduct or a gross misconduct, but you think it happened, you can't expel someone because you think it happened. And I don't know of any head referees who like to expel skaters. Head referees, all referees want to see the game happen. They want it to be fair. They want people to skate and enjoy themselves and have a competitive, action-packed game. But there are times where expulsion becomes necessary because of someone's actions under the rules, like jumping into a landing zone where there's nowhere to land through an apex jump. I'm not calling that out for a particular reason. It just jumped into my head. There was one this past weekend at the Big O where a male skater jumped the apex, or no, excuse me, it was a female skater, jumped the apex, wasn't going to land her jump in a safe landing zone, so landed on her knees into the back of the legs of an opposing skater. She knew she couldn't stick the landing, so she dropped to her knees as she came out of the air and went into the back of an opposing blocker and took her down. That's an expulsion. It's one thing to say, I might make this landing, but it was pretty obvious this person jumped when they knew they couldn't land the jump. They just thought they would go for it. And that's just dangerous skating, gross misconduct. However, if an official feels a skater should be expelled from a game for a serious legal action, but no other official can confirm it, the penalty should be downgraded. We always assume actions are legal unless evidence proves otherwise. Now, what this comes back to, and it's kind of tangential, but not really, we never look for penalties. We don't go out and say, I'm going to watch for back blocks today. We should be watching for them anyway. We don't target penalty types. We don't try and up our quotas. It doesn't happen. So we assume actions are legal unless evidence prove otherwise. Dorothy, you were with Monterey, right?
Yeah.
Was Fresh the head ref when you were there?
Yes.
Okay, so I love Fresh. Fresh Step is wonderful. But when I first got to Monterey, one of the first things Fresh Step said to me was, hey, under the new rule set, I haven't gotten to call a delay of game yet. I'm really looking out for it. I want to be able to call a delay of game. So we had a little conversation about the nature of penalties and why we don't go looking for them to call them. We're not filling in a bingo card. Now, that being said, there are scrimmages where we play penalty bingo. where you try and get, as an official, you try and get one of every penalty code to fill in your bingo card. That's at a scrimmage, and all the skaters know what's happening, and normally it's a twisted scrimmage where they're all having fun anyway. But in a game, we always assume actions are legal unless evidence proves otherwise. So we always give the benefit of the doubt. If we're not 100% sure, then I'm sorry, it's not a penalty. It's how it goes. And some skaters, if they feel they have been aggrieved by someone, will get very upset because that was a penalty. I'm quite possibly it was a penalty, but we either didn't see all the components of it, the initiation, impact, or result, or there's enough dispute amongst the referees, if there's an official review, for example, that we can't come to a conclusion and say, yes, this warrants an expulsion. Yes, this warrants a penalty. We must always assume it's legal unless there's something to prove otherwise. Make sense? Just because a hit is big doesn't mean it's illegal. I see this regularly, particularly in modern derby, when blockers are so strong and triangles are just rooted to the ground. And a jammer comes in at absolute maximum speed and bounces off the back of a wall. And a blocker might go, they're obviously in pain. They've been hit in the middle of the back, but they don't fall over. They don't change position. They don't get hit off the track. It's not illegal. Now, you could always argue the case that maybe it's dangerous. If the jammer comes in at absolute full speed, doesn't attempt to break, and nails a blocker in the center of the back, you could argue that's dangerous skating. But that's an argument. It could go either way. So just because a hit is big, that does not mean it's illegal. And you'll see this a lot in men's derby in particular, where they just beat the crap out of each other. But they don't fall over when it happens. And I'm not saying women don't do that either, but women are just more strategic. Women, I'm not going to get into men's derby versus women's derby. I'll leave that alone. But big hits don't mean illegal hits. They just mean big hits. So we have to dial our metrics very carefully as officials when we watch for penalties. Look at the nature of the game. Look at the skaters that are playing. Look at how solid they are on the track, and use our discretion to adjudicate penalties appropriately. Always assuming that impact is legal, actions are legal unless evidence proves otherwise. So how do we learn to see penalties? Study the rules, study them again, watch derby, study some more, watch more derby, and then start over again. Now, when I say watch derby, I don't mean watch the pack. I mean watch the officials. Watch the referees, watch their positioning, watch how they communicate, because you'll hear it. You'll see them talking, you'll hear them talking. Watch the hand signals, watch how they pass things from one to another, like the pack, or a penalty. If an OPR calls a penalty in a jammer and the jammer's halfway around the track, and they pass it into a pack ref who passes it to the jam ref who then gets it to the skater, watch the officials. Eventually you'll be able to watch the pack and the officials, but you'll stop watching the pack as a skater would watch the pack and start watching it as a referee watches the pack, which is a different thing entirely. But watch derby, read the rules. Go ahead, Dorothy.
Did you watch the Windy City 2x4 bout at the Big O?
I have not watched that bout. I've heard it was an amazing bout, and I'm going to have to download it and watch it.
59 penalties for 2x4 and 37 for Windy.
That's pretty good.
It's a lot of penalties.
My record's 108 for a game between both teams. So yeah, so that's up there. For that level of play, that's up there. More than I like to see. All right, how do we learn to see penalties? Use 3-second observation. Pick a pair of opposing skaters in the pack, one red, one blue. Watch them for 3 seconds and cycle. Look at their heads, look at their shoulders, look at their hips, look at their feet, look at their forearms. Then start over again. And just move your head, move your eyes, whatever you have to do, and watch a pair of opposing blockers for 3 seconds. Then move to the next pair. Then move to the next pair. Until you cycle, then go back to the start again. And just keep watching. And if you see something illegal, start figuring out what the illegality was. After a while, when you're good at that, drop it to 2 seconds. And then drop it to 1 second. And then scan the pack constantly. And there are things you can do to help yourself with this. If you're an OPR, move back from the line. OPRs, when they start out, tend to run too close to the outside line. You can't see cuts. You can't see most forearms because you don't have the perspective to see the whole body. Move 3 feet back from the outside line if you have the space. And then watch 3 seconds of each pair. And then 2 seconds, then 1 second, then scan the whole pack. Move in and out of the line. See what perspective is better for what position. When the pack's moving fast, just skate. Keep up with them. Because on the outside, it can suck trying to keep up with a fast pack. If they're stopped on a corner, back off so you can see the whole pack in your vision. And then just scan the whole pack. But scan constantly. 3 seconds, 3 seconds, 3 seconds, 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 2 seconds, 2 seconds, until you can look at the whole pack at once. Never, ever be afraid to ask other officials questions. And you can ask, don't just look for officials who know more than you, look for officials that were on their first game. Ask what they saw. Because you can learn what to look for and what not to look for by what other people looked for or saw during your game. But there's never anything wrong with asking another official what happened. Don't ask during a jam. Ask between jams. Ask at halftime. Make a note of things you want to ask questions about. And at the halftime officials meeting, say, can I ask about what happened with that blue blocker on the outside in Jam 7? Just make a note to yourself to ask about it later. Because somebody will have seen it and they'll say, oh, well, that was a no pass. I just didn't get my hands up in time, but it was a no pass. That's why there was no cut call. So always ask other officials questions. Never be afraid of it. Penalties, penalties, penalties. Yay. 2011, WFTDA League on the left in blue. Renegade League on the right in purple. Middle of the second period, end of the jam, these two decided they didn't like each other. And they got into it. If you look, you can just see the blue blocker's mouth guard is coming out of her mouth as the purple blocker's fist lands on her face. It knocked her mouth guard out with a punch. Was this an expulsion? Who got expelled?
The Renegade. Actually, both of them. I take it
Both
back.
The Renegade, the purple skater, has landed a punch. The blue skater's hand, which, I mean, it looks frozen here, it is inbound to hit the purple skater in the face, and she clawed her in the face. They were both expelled instantly. She's like this, and she opened and hit her in the face and pulled back as she came through. They were both expelled immediately. However, they wouldn't break up the fight, and the other pack ref and I ended up taking each one of them off the track in a headlock to break the fight because they wouldn't stop fighting. We ended up, that's the only game I've ever actually called the game, because with 12 minutes left, the Renegade team's fans had been yelling, kill the refs, fuck the refs, chanting it in unison. Did I tell you this last week? They were chanting that at us, and then one of them threw a Coke in the outside ref lane to make the ref fall down and slide. And at that point, I called the game. We got all the officials together, and we got the captains in, and we said, we're out of here, see you, and we left. So yeah, that was an expulsion. How about this one? This is NorCal, and I think it's Unforgiven. Yeah. Blue blocker, her arm is still tucked. So assuming she initiated, she's not winging. She's not pushing with her elbow that we can, she didn't push her elbow that we can tell. But the purple jammer is falling, and as she falls, she's saying some very profane words. Is that an expulsion?
I would say no.
I thought under the new rules that it could be.
It can be, it doesn't have to be.
It has to be direct to somebody, correct?
It doesn't even have to be directed. Now, that makes it worse if it is. So here's the wording. Profane, abuse, and obscene language is unsporting and degrading to the sport, but should not always be penalized. If said language is audible to the audience or via broadcast, blocker is penalized. This is a case example. They've got white blocker in their case. If white blocker's profanity was directed at an official, white blocker is penalized. Otherwise, a few choice words directed at a teammate or opponent should result in a warning and be penalized if it continues. So it's not always, it's back to discretion again. So if it's a few choice words, it's probably not an expulsion. However, if it's a few choice words, you again, then chances are the purple skater will be expelled from the game. And you'll see some referees who call this really tightly. I wait and see what the nature of the game is and how tightly I'm going to call it. So if I see a skater, if a skater gets a penalty and goes, please excuse my language, skater gets a penalty and goes, fuck! If it's not heard by broadcast and it's in the middle of the pack and no audience member hears it, it's probably not a penalty. If a skater looks at me as head ref and goes, fuck, that's going to be an expulsion. Even though there's no you on the end, that's directed at an official. So if a skater is looking at an official and utters a word like that, chances are they're directing it. It's not a random utterance. They're speaking to someone. The bottom line is if skaters can help themselves, it's better to not use language like that on the track. That really is what it comes down to. And the rules make the point that it's a high energy sport. Adrenaline is high. People get riled up. Their tempers go off and they say things they shouldn't. They say things they wouldn't say other times. To be a referee, you have to have really thick skin. And we'll come back to this, but you have to. Because you will hear skaters say things about you and your parentage and the shape of your body and what they think of, the size of your nose and whether or not you like to sleep with small children, and you will hear all of it. Doesn't mean it's right, because it's really not right at all, but it happens. And I can tell you that as an official who's been doing this for 7 years, to work a game where skaters yell things like that, and then at the end they all put their hands in and go, "Thank you, refs, thank you, NSOs." That's pretty hollow. It doesn't feel. Those are teams I don't normally stress about coming back to work for. If that's how they treat officials who come to visit them, they're not likely to find many officials. And I can tell you that none of you do that. So, yay! Again, always assume initiation, action, and result are legal unless there is evidence to indicate otherwise. Even if there is evidence to indicate otherwise, use your discretion. Procedural penalties, not having a number in somebody's arm, doesn't matter. There's a discussion on the WFTDA officials forum right now about another discussion actually about a mouth guard on the track. And the referee's question was, should I have called the jam when I saw a mouth guard on the track? Well, did you see the mouth guard? It was. Oh, I could have called the jam and checked all the mouth guards. Do you think it was a mouth guard from someone who was skating in the game and they lost it? Was it a spare they could have had in their bra strap that fell out? It turned out it was a spare mouth guard. So nobody had lost a mouth guard that they were wearing. It came out of someone's bra strap. So that doesn't affect the game. It's like a knee pad. If you lose the plate off a knee pad or off a wrist guard, a ref picks it up, the game keeps going. So you can't just say because A has happened, this is illegal. A mouth guard is on the track. That does not mean a skater is skating without a mouth guard. Assume things are legal unless you have evidence to prove otherwise. We always have to treat the game that way. Make sure you see all three components: initiation, action, result. Take your time to get the call right, even if it upsets the skaters. Just explain to them afterwards, it was a late call. I was making sure I had the right call. Ask other referees for confirmation. Hey, did you see color number cut in that last corner? If asked for input in a situation, if by the head ref, for example, tell what you saw. Don't say what you felt. Don't say what you thought. There's nothing that will annoy a head referee more, and I did it for my first 2 seasons, so I learned better. Head ref would go, "What happened on the last corner?" "Well, I think she was trying to..." "No, don't tell me what you thought. Tell me what you saw." Because it slows down the game. It injects unnecessary editorializing, and it just makes everyone wish that you'd stop refereeing. So just talk about what you saw. Don't tell them what you felt, what you thought, what the jammer had for lunch, just what you saw, just the facts. Officials communication. We communicate constantly as officials with each other. And I know, do any of you as skaters ever hear the referees talk to each other? Or talk to the NSOs? Sometimes, a little bit? Honey Badger, not so much? Maybe?
Sometimes.
Okay. Retta, I know you ref and you skate, so you know what it's like. We are talking constantly as officials. We're always communicating. The only way to learn the communication is through practice and experience. Get with other referees, be on a crew, shadow them. You don't even have to ref, just shadow a crew. If you don't need to skate about or you're off on a jam, say, ask the head ref beforehand. On the jams I'm not skating, do you mind if I shadow on the inside so I can hear the ref communication? And there are very few head referees who will say, no, get off my track. Everyone is happy to have you learn, to have officials learn. So, lead is open, lead is closed. That's normally the front pack ref talking to the jam refs. So the initial pass, when somebody gets lead, the front pack ref will turn to the other jam ref and say, lead is closed, blue has lead. Or lead is open, lead is available, lead is taken. Everyone has their own language. If you're jam reffing, ask the front pack ref what phrases they like to use to indicate lead is available or lead is taken. I say open, closed because they're shorter than available, taken. In play and out of play. This is communication that's given to skaters, but it's intended for other referees as well. So when there are two blockers in the front 18 feet from the pack and they're stopping the opposing jammer and they're moving out of play, out of play, out of play, you'll hear out of play. That's to let the skaters know that they're out of play and to let the jam ref know they went 20 feet, that scoring trip is done. And at that point, the jam ref should throw points if it's a scoring trip. If it's the initial trip and the lead is open, they should call lead. So that's their sign. Hey, they've reached 20 feet, call lead. Numner. Oh, good. If a blocker hits out a jammer and recycles, and the jam ref goes back, quite often, an astute pack ref will go, initiator is 467, to let the jam ref know that's the person the jammer has to come back in behind. So they will tell the jam ref, here's the one to watch for. Maybe there's more. Maybe it's 46723. There's two skaters have been behind. Initiator went null. Pack refs will tell jam refs this. If a blocker hits out a jammer and then steps out or falls out of bounds, to let the jam ref know the jammer can come back in without committing a penalty. No pack and pack is here. You know those, you hear them all the time. If the pack refs are handing the pack back and forth, you'll hear you have the pack, I have the pack. I normally do this when I have to leave the track for something. If I'm on the inside of the track and I have to leave the track to deal with something like fouling out a skater, or there's something happening on a bench that needs immediate attention during a jam, I will say to the other pack ref, you have the pack, and I will leave to take care of it. The bridge ones are interesting. You don't hear this always, but it can be very helpful. If a team is bridging back to recycle a jammer, the back pack referee and the jam referee will move back with that bridge so they can tell when 20 feet is reached, when the bridge breaks, when the jammer can legally re-enter, those three things. And the pack ref will lean into the jam ref or stand close behind him so skaters can't hear because we're not supposed to coach, and go one bridge. First bridge is good, meaning the first bridging skater from the pack is at or less than 10 feet. Second bridge is good. Third bridge is good. Second bridge broke. If the second bridge broke, the third blocker is probably out of play. So you hear third bridge broke, out of play. And that way the jam ref knows the jammer can come back in. Front pack ref will follow the jam ref as if there's a bridge forward and go 15 feet, 16, 17, 18 as the skaters move out. So the jam ref knows they're getting close to that 20. Because the jam ref, if it's just the jam ref can catch out of their peripheral vision how far from the pack they are, or if they've done it a long time, they can tell based on how fast the jammer is moving, how far they are from the pack. But if they're being blocked by opposing blockers, it's very hard to tell how far they are because they go slowly. Maybe the pack moves up behind them. So the pack ref will say 18 feet, 18 feet, 19 feet, 19 feet, out of play. The same is true. Another option is to go in, out of play. And that's intended for the jammer ref. So the jam ref knows when they're in and out of play, when the opposing blockers are in and out of play. One of the things I heard at my last WFDA clinic, which was last summer 2016 in Florida, was that this kind of was in vogue for a while. You may hear it when you're jam reffing, is the front pack ref. When the blockers were close to the pack, they'd go in, in, in. As they move further away, they go in. And then as they got to 20 feet, it'd be in. So the faster they set it, the farther they were from the pack. I prefer to just go in 18, in 19, in out of play, so they know when they hit 20 feet. When jam ref laps jam ref, jammer laps jammer, it takes a full lap, so hips twice. If it's the first time around, you'll hear positional lap, so the other jam ref doesn't count a lap point by mistake. And you'll hear lap point. You have lead, I have lead, star pass. Maybe the star pass is illegal. And the jam ref doesn't catch it's illegal, but the pack ref does. So the jam ref is chasing the pivot, who is, they think, the new jammer, and the pack ref will turn and go, not the jammer. And they stop and come back. That also lets the front pack know if that pivot takes off out of the engagement zone, they're not the jammer. Clean. Clean you'll hear a lot. When a skater is hit out and comes back onto the track, if they enter legally or re-enter legally, you'll hear clean. I used to say legal and illegal, but they're too close together. In the heat of the moment, you might hear illegal when I said legal, if you're the jam ref and you call a cut. So I just say clean for a clean entry. And no pass, no penalty. If that's called by the outside, I will always repeat it for the jam refs in case they haven't seen the outside do this. I'll just say no pass, no pass. And they know that the jammer should not get that point. So this kind of communication is nonstop between the referees. And actually, it's kind of, I understand skaters are in the zone. They're so focused on the game that nothing off the track is audible to them. But it's still kind of surprising to me from time to time to hear that the skaters don't hear what we're saying. Because there's so much, it's like we're having a conversation. It's nonstop on the infield. So we talk all the time. Any questions about that so far? Anything so far? All right, Xander and officiating. Again, it's not about you. It's never about you as an official. And we have to take it that way, otherwise we'd be very upset. There was a lengthy thread on Facebook this week from a level 3 referee who had to work 2 MRDA games at the Big O. And he posted and said, I never realized, what did he say? He said, I never realized how much I dislike officiating men's games until I have to officiate. So he was forced to. He went to a tournament where he had to work men's games. It led to this lengthy thread. And officials, being officials, no, it was like 115 comments. And not one person said, men's games suck. MRDA sucks. Guy skaters suck. I chimed in at one point and said, I stopped working men's games after a game where a skater who'd fouled out with 8 penalties, 12 or 10 minutes into the game, he got 5 penalties in 12 seconds. And he followed me to my car to fight me because I shouldn't have expelled him from the game. And I said, that's enough men's derby for me. Now, there's nothing editorial in there. These are the facts. This is what happened. And somebody came back and said, I'm a woman and I skate men's derby and I love men's derby and men are awesome. It's not about that. It's about the behavior of some individuals and why I won't work those games because of it. So it's like that for officials. It's not about us. It's never about us. And you have to look at it that way, otherwise you'll get very upset about derby. Because when you start working games outside your home area, you know, when you're back in the States, if you're officiating games, you will hear the most horrible things about yourself. And you have to just go, it's not about me. They're angry about the game. Remaining calm is the best way to approach any bout situation. If you as an official get wound up, the skaters will get wound up. The other officials will get wound up. The coaches will get wound up. I've had coaches yell from the bench, don't listen to a goddamn thing this jam ref says to you. Really? That's how you skaters get kicked out of a game. But if that's what you want to do, that's fine. Just stay calm. Try to remove your ego. Sometimes other officials may have feedback for you, with feedback in quotes. There are officials who don't subscribe to this theory, and they feel that it's okay to say whatever they're thinking about a game in the heat of the moment. And some ref might skate up to you someday and go, that was the shittiest backblock call I've ever seen. Where did you learn to ref? That's not what you want to hear from someone who's on your crew in the middle of a game, but it will happen. Sometimes skaters have feedback. A lot of the time, skaters have feedback. And I'm not faulting anybody who's in this conversation, just so you know, I'm really not. I try and maintain calm and equanimity when I'm officiating, and I treat everyone with respect. It's not always, it doesn't always come back in response. It's not always reciprocated. But it has from everybody here, just so you know, okay? Honey's laughing over there. What now? So sometimes skaters have feedback for the officials. Go ahead.
I've just witnessed several times. This, on, league mashups, I've seen some stuff happen. It sucks, but I know exactly what you're talking about. That's all.
So it took me a long time to learn this about how to officiate derby. In my first year of refereeing, 4 months after I started, the Ole Rollers, who were then the WFDA champions and had been for 2 years running, had an open scrimmage on Monday nights. And their head referee at the time was Mr. Rock, who was one of 4 level 5 referees at that point in time. And he oversaw all the scrimmages. And all the baby Zeebs in the area came out to work Ole scrimmages because, oh my God, it's Ole and it's Mr. Rock. And I got the nod, so I went down to Ole scrimmages, a 50-mile drive. I went to work their scrimmage. And Ole were some very experienced skaters. They'd all been champion speed skaters at the national and international level. And they really liked to wind referees up, and they were really good at it. And I was jam reffing, and I sent my jammer to the box. And this is before all the profanity rules. And I was pretty tense because there's Mr. Rock off my right shoulder, and here's this championship, champion team, national champions. And the skater went to the box and turned before she sat and looked at me and yelled, "Why am I in the fucking box?" And I looked at her and I said, "Because you committed a fucking penalty." And I just said, and Mr. Rock let me finish the scrimmage. And he came to me at the end of the scrimmage and he said, "Please don't come back." I brought it on myself. And it took me 3 more years to get level 2 certification. And I believe it was because Rock was a level 5 and had a say in who got certified. He's the tournament head ref for the Big O. I've applied for it for 5 years running. I've never been accepted. And everyone I know has been accepted. And I have to believe that he remembers that night when I worked his scrimmage and I swore at one of his skaters. So skaters can get under official skin. It happens to everybody. And it took me a long time to learn to stay calm and not let it get to me. And now it doesn't bother me. I just, whatever. If that's how people react because they're angry in the heat of the moment, they do what they do. Because sometimes coaches have feedback. Coaches have lots of feedback. We had a game last year in Bakersfield, a long weekend, 4 games in 3 days. And Bakersfield is like 300 miles from where I lived. Bakersfield had 3 leagues and no officials, none, not one. So they asked me to set this up for them, this little mini tournament. And I brought in an entire crew of referees and an entire crew of NSOs to work their games. And the last game of the weekend, they had a coach. This was the Diamond Divas in Bakersfield. And he was standing about 2 feet from the outside ref lane, screaming obscenities at officials. And he's behind the outside pack ref, who's Noah Fallon. Noah's 6'3" and 310 pounds, screaming to Noah's back. And Noah just keeps looking at him like, what? Seriously? He got so loud, the penalty box manager couldn't be heard by the skaters when she said, "Stand done." They couldn't hear her because he was screaming so loud. And the head ref, Dorothy, that I was jam time. The head ref was fresh. We had Judge Injury, who was a level 3 certified ref, also working the game. And Fresh decided it was time to quiet this guy down. So he called an official timeout, and he skates over to the coach. He goes, "Coach, can we talk about your volume, please?" "I want to talk about forearms." And he just took over the whole conversation screaming about forearms. And he wouldn't stop. We waited about 30 seconds, and then Judge, who's a level 3 ref with 2 patches on his arm, skated over and said, hi, if you don't stop this behavior, we'll be expelling you from the game. And the coach said, you're not the head referee. And judge, he swears he didn't, but we have witnesses. He went, you see these? I'm the highest ranking referee here, and I will expel you from this game. And the coach went, and just stopped. He didn't say a word to anybody the rest of the game because he knew he would get expelled. And sometimes you have to do that. It's not a nice thing to do. I hate doing it because skaters rely on coaches. But skaters also learn from coaches, not just on the track, not just how to skate on the track. They learn how to behave on the track. And if coaches get away with things because no one calls them on it, then the skaters will start to pick that up. So it's really nice to just stay calm, ignore all the feedback you get. But there are times where you have to respond. I'll normally call in captains and coaches if I'm head ref and say, so there's some behavior we're not really comfortable with. We'd like to hear less profanity directed at referees, less screaming directed at the officials. And if it doesn't stop, we will have to start expulsions. And that normally stops it. You can't go over and yell it because that just escalates. That's, you know, we're just upright apes. You start screaming at people, it just escalates the conversation. So we have to be very calm about it. Here's the way it used to be in Derby. The head ref was the nexus with the officials and the fans and the skaters and coaches circling all around them. And they had a bit of interaction, but the head ref was the center of the whole game. And it used to be skaters were told, if you have an issue, go to the head ref. You want to ask a question? Go to the head ref. If you go to somebody else, they won't answer. Go to the head ref. It's not like that anymore. It's more like this. It's much closer. Any skater or coach can ask a question of any official. They'll normally be told if it takes more than 30 seconds, go to the head ref. But if you want to ask a yes/no question or a quick question of any official, please feel free. And as a referee, your head ref should tell you, and if you're a head ref, you should tell your officials, if any skater or coach wants to ask you a question and it's a quick answer, please feel free to answer them. That keeps the game going. If it's going to take longer than 30 seconds, ask them to come to us. The same is true with the fans. It used to be, don't ever talk to the fans. Don't respond to them. Stay completely away from all of them. But now it's less so. We're allowed to interact with them. Just don't get involved in banter and don't get into arguments with them. Because fans will try and bait officials. It's part of what they do. Officials have to develop a thick skin. Remember, the calmer you remain, the more effective you are as a referee. Because when you're calm, your knowledge of the rules stays much more intact. If you start to get upset, then the rules will slip out of your head to be replaced at your core by being upset. That happens to all of us. Losing your center will affect your calls. If a head referee critiques you, try and take that critique to heart, but don't be hurt by it. It's not meant to be painful. Head referees that do that, I won't work with them. And I will tell them, I'm not going to work with you because you don't give feedback, you just criticize. I'm looking for feedback on my skills, not looking for criticism. If you're going to critique me, make it a positive critique, please. So try and take that to heart, but don't be hurt by it. It's not an attack on you personally. It's an effort to change how you're doing something to better the game overall. And it's easy to say that. It's hard to take it if somebody goes, God, your positioning sucks. You're too slow. Move back 5 feet and stay there. Quit trying to race up. It happens. You know, if you have to critique someone on the same thing again and again and again, hopefully they're going to get it sooner than later. Sometimes they won't, and you have to move them somewhere else and let them try a different skill or replace them. You know, pull them off the crew, have them sit out the game as an alt, have them be an observer so they can watch the game and help you. Because it's just as important to have someone, a referee sitting watching the game who can come to you and say, you're a little far behind when the pack comes around the apex. Make sure you move up a couple of feet. I think you may have missed some cuts. So try and take critiques to heart, but don't personalize them. It's about your skills and how to better them. It's an opportunity to learn how to be a better referee. Any questions? We're almost done, I promise. The fishing ethics. Your league's code of conduct and the WFTDA code of conduct govern your behavior as an official. And they're pretty explicit. I don't know what your league's code of conduct is, but the WFTDA one is fairly explicit in terms of what officials can and cannot do. We have to disclose all potential conflicts of interest to other officials. So if I'm refereeing a game and my wife is skating in it, I have to tell all the officials at the joint officials meeting, my wife is red 133. So they know that I have disclosed this. I'm not trying to hide anything. There's no, it lessens the potential for me displaying any kind of inappropriate officiating, any kind of favoritism. Honesty, fairness, and integrity. Those are the buzzwords in the code of conduct they expect us to adhere to. Disclosures. If you are a coach, you need to disclose it. If you have bench managed for a team, you must disclose it. If you skate with a team in the league, you must disclose it. Spousal relationships, significant other relationships must be disclosed at the officials meeting. Everyone needs to know this. So for example, I told you this, Honey Badger. I don't think I told it to the group. I talked to Bipolar Lola, the THR in Hawaii, and I explained to her that I was doing officiating sessions, rules sessions, and that's with your league, and that some questions had come up regarding how to address things in captain's meetings. How should we ask about this? How should we bring this up in a review if it happens? And I said, just for full disclosure, I have had these conversations with this league that I will be officiating come the tournament in Hawaii. And I've already told her that. So that's all out in the open. Other disclosures, any compensation. If you have received any monies as an official for travel, it's rare. In my 360 games, I was once paid $25 in gas money. All I've ever received. Make sure they give it to you after the game. They come out before the game and hand you a check and go, here's your money. It always looks bad. Discounts offered to officials will not do others. I got called aside in my first year of refereeing. I went to ref a game, and they had the most awesome league merch. They had beautiful shirts, and I really wanted a shirt. I went out at halftime, and I said, hey, I'm interested in getting a shirt. And they said, $25. And I said, I'm a ref in this game. Do I get any kind of break on it? And the head ref heard this and went, come with me. And we had a chat about it. And I realized, no, I'll never do that again. I didn't know any better. It was foolish of me, completely foolish of me. I can tell stories against myself because I think they help learn, they help educate. So just don't do that. Immediate family members who are involved in the game. If you have a family member who's skating, or they're officiating, or they're a coach, you should probably let the officials know. Business partners. If you have a business partner who's skating, you have to disclose that. Employer-employee relationships, you have to disclose that. The other one that comes up very, very rarely is if you are an official and either your landlord or a tenant of yours is skating in a game or officiating in a game, that must be disclosed. So all officials are required to ensure any WFT event is free of harassment or abuse. And that involves any kinds of harassment or abuse, verbal, physical, based on gender, based on anything you can imagine. It should not happen. Now, we exclude heckling from that, although you could probably, in some cases, say that heckling does extend the level of harassment. We try and make sure that doesn't happen. You look confused, Dorothy. Okay. You can't use my position as an official to better yourself. So don't ever ask for a merch discount on t-shirts. Never engage in sort of gambling aspect when you whiffed at a sanction bouts. You can't, we can't, we just can't. This one's really important. The expression of personal opinions regarding teams, players, and bouts shall be avoided in public forums. Whiffed or affiliated officials shall never publicly express predictions or judgments regarding bouts they are scheduled to officiate. We can't say anything ever publicly about officials, about games, about skaters. We just cannot do it. And it will bite us in the butt. 2 years ago at divisionals, Santa Cruz was in D2. I think they were ranked 42nd, and they lost their game. And 3 years ago, and one of their referees went on Facebook and said, that was a bullshit game. Santa Cruz lost because the referees sucked. And then he named the referees. He tagged them all in the post. And that was D2 divisionals. And someone filed the grievance with the WIFTDA, and his head referee got the grievance and contacted him and said, look, we have to talk about this. You can't do this. And he went, fuck you. I can say what I want. And the head ref said, no, you can't. Here's the code of conduct. I quit. Okay, probably better that way. And he retired from officiating. There are instances. I've seen one where a referee who was watching a game at the last Western Divisional when they were regionals, the Western Regional in Richmond, California, had a beer in each hand, was very drunk, and sat up in the stands yelling, "That wasn't 20 feet, that was 30 feet, front ref's an asshole." And there was a woof to the games official there. And that referee never worked the sanction game ever again. We just can't do it. We can't express public opinions. We may be able to sit quietly amongst ourselves or sit as a crew at a tournament and say, wow, I might have called that a bit differently. But you never look and go, oh my God, that ref sucks. Because if somebody overhears it, all you've done is call disrepute upon someone, and it'll come back to haunt them and haunt you. So we don't do it.
Kita?
My two favorite quotes: our job is to watch a derby bout, and if we happen to see a penalty, to call it. That's all we do. We watch a game, and if we happen to see a penalty happen, we make the call. And this other one, this is ethics in a nutshell for derby officials. Don't do anything on the track you want someone to see you doing off the track. Colin's a level 5. He was at Big O last weekend, if you were watching that. So those are the two quotes that sum it all up. Watch the bout. If you happen to see a penalty, call it. And then don't do anything on the track you want someone to see you doing off the track. Any questions? The next thing to do is referee. Get out to scrimmages. If you're not skating in them, shadow people, shadow referees. Ask if you can shadow. If there's no one to work a position, ask if you can work it. Explain if you're new to it, explain you're new, but you want to get more experience. Just get the experience. Get out there, work the scrimmages, watch the bouts. Go to refed.com because Werner's got some ref-ed.com has some really good videos out there for things like initiation and back blocks and forearms and low blocks. I'll do more of these sessions if people want. Ask me questions, ask other officials questions. We want to grow the officiating community, and to do that, we have to help each other. So you'll find there are very few officials who have been in this for any length of time who aren't willing to help anyone who asks. So if there are no questions, thank you very much for being here. Do we need another one of these, do you think, Honey Badger, or are we good for now?
Let me get the majority of the people that haven't been able to stay on task with these past 2 weeks. Let me get them caught up and get back to you on that. I know that I have quite a few people that are interested in watching the Google Drive videos that you said you send me links to.
Yep, I will send those links out.
And then once I get some feedback as a group, if there's something specific we can work on, I'll send that to you. And I think that would give us a good direction on where to take it from here.
Sure. And if the opportunity presents, I'm always happy if we can make it work to come down there and shadow people at a scrimmage and help out. And, and if we can tie it in with something else, anything to help make it worth my while, worth your while, for everybody.
Yeah. You said that you're coming down here in July, right?
I was supposed to. The game I've been asked to come and referee is early June. It's the weekend of Hawaii.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah, they moved it to June 4th.
What's that?
They moved it to June 4th.
Yes. They had asked me to come back down again. And what they said was, yeah, come fly down. We'll put you up on a couch. And I said, I'm happy to come down, but it kind of, come on down and teach us a clinic and we'll put you up on a couch. Like, I'm happy to come down. I don't want to be a jerk about it, but it cost me $120 to fly there, help offset a little, charge $10 for a clinic, do something. And then I'd be glad to come down and teach, or I can do it like we did here tonight. I'm happy to do that too. But I would like to do it in person because that way you get the instant feedback and the shadowing. I think that makes a big difference.
That would be awesome. I'll tell you what, I'll talk it over with the rest of the girls in the BOD, and if there's a way we can get you down here before the fall season starts, that would be amazing.
Okay, I'm not fishing for anyone to pay for me to come down there. I'm not, honestly. It's just
no, it's all good.
No.
Dates and stuff like that, but if give us some grounding before we start the fall season, I think that would be great.
I think coming down in August for our scrimmage or bout would be amazing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then let's tentatively look at that and see what we can work out.
Sounds awesome sauce, my friend.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Guys.
And I'll see you in a couple of weekends.
Yes, you will.
Send out those links.